chains around my ears. No more feeling powerless. No shame, take your power, break out of the pain. Because it's more than fornication, more than procreation. It's not just self-stimulation. Sex energy is co-creation and transformation into a new destination. This is Porn Talk. Porn Talk. Send you away from thoughts of life. Break free. Break your power. Embrace. Take back your power. Take back your power. Take back your power. This is Porn Talk. This is Porn Talk Live. Here is your host, Eric Zuzak.
Welcome to Porn Talk. This is Powerful Eric. Porn Talk is not just a show about breaking addictions, it's about breaking belief systems. We are bound by self-imposed and societal chains. Break those rusty, nasty, heavy old chains and get empowered right now. We have someone here to empower us today. Michael Clegg joins us to share his journey of transformation sparked by a life-changing tragedy after a fatal accident. Clegg had to face and rebuild himself, rediscovering a purpose he thought he'd lost. Through this experience, Clegg developed his Leaders Go First philosophy and the Leadership Squad framework, which he uses to guide others from top executives to high school quarterbacks in creating connection, psychological safety, and resilience. Together, we'll discover how these principles, we can apply some of this to overcoming addictions and helping you to find a renewed sense of purpose and an unwavering commitment to your future self. Please welcome Michael Clegg. Welcome, Michael.
What's up, man? Thank you for having me. That's quite an intro too, and great music, by the way. That was fun.
Well, you're quite an amazing guy. Let's get right to what was the tragedy that changed your life?
Yeah, so I think it's helpful to understand a few things. You mentioned leaders go first, and so I'm really involved in three primary areas of my life outside of family. Let me make sure I say this just all professionally. So I'm the CEO of an executive placement firm. I am recent founder of Leadership Squared, which is where I do leadership development and my keynote speaking. And then I'm also a high school football coach. And by the way, we play our arch rivals this Friday. But it was in the spring of 2023. I was at a football tournament. We actually played in the championship, which we won, beating the arch rivals that we're playing this week. And it's the first time we've beaten them in 7 years. So you can imagine, like, parents were elated, the kids were elated, I was elated, just a ton of fun. So I hop in my truck to head home, and I was in the Charlotte area, which is where I am today, and had about a 45-minute ride home and was driving. And on this part of the highway, on the interstate, it was pretty dark, not a lot of lights. It's out in more of a rural part of Charlotte. And there was a gentleman standing on the bridge that I did not see. And I was on the interstate below the underpass, and he jumped off in front of my truck. And within a split second, I mean, I didn't have time to react. It happened that fast. And I ran over him, and he did not survive. And obviously that in and of itself is like, even telling the story, sometimes it's kind of like an out of body experience. Like, man, that did happen to me 18 months ago. And which isn't a long time, by the way. But, all I could think of was how quickly I could pull over off the interstate to go back and help him. And I do that. and I'm running up, the shoulder of the highway, and cars are still, flying by. And fortunately, there was a couple of bystanders that saw it happen that pulled over quickly to try and get the traffic to stop. And by the time I got back to the gentleman, it was clear that he didn't survive, which I'm not surprised. And that just set an entire string of events for me. And as you can imagine, self-reflection isn't exactly something that comes to mind when something like that happens. I'd received tons of messages. And by the way, obviously they closed down the interstate that evening. And fortunately, I left before my team left, because I also, one of my kids, my son, was on that team also. So it very well could have been him or any of his teammates, or they could have driven by that. But fortunately, they left a little later than I did because they were celebrating. And so I was very fortunate that happened to me and not to one of my kids. I can't imagine any of my players or my own kid having to go through that experience. So happy to expand on that, but I'll stop there for now, and then you just tell me where you want me to go with that.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry that you had to endure that and go through that. I can't begin to imagine. And like I told you on our first call there, a friend of mine, I was on the phone with her the night that her son committed suicide in a very similar way. He didn't jump off a bridge. He ran in front of a semi-tractor trailer. And I can't help but think of that night.
Yeah.
And so, to have that happen to you. So take us through like the dark part here first. So,
Sure.
like, how did that affect you? What happened? And by the way, for those that are listening, like, the reason that I have Clegg on here is because guys think they come to me that they're wanting to overcome sex or porn addiction or some other addiction, but I tell them it's not about the porn, or it's not about the alcohol. It's about whatever's fueling it. And some people have some horrific tragedies that happen. And so you were able to, only 18 months ago, endure this and actually come out the other side, sounds like, for the better. So, but take us through so like what happened then after that?
Yeah. So that was a long evening. Obviously, police investigated the accident, and they had to double check, triple check everything that I said was facts. And because there were several witnesses, I went home, and I'd called my wife from the scene, and obviously there wasn't a whole lot that I could say other than what happened. And I guess there was a level of shock. I knew what was going on, but I still was like, holy crap, like this really happened to me. And then I kept going through this loop about, the individual that jumped. Like, why? Who are they? Were they a husband? Were they a father? I knew just by, visual appearance, it looked to be, mid 40s male. What was going through that person's life in the moment that was the choice that they made in that moment to end their life. And, I kept going in a loop. It wasn't necessarily the accident scene itself that kept going in a loop, but it was the questioning. And still to this day, I have no idea. I don't know the gentleman's name. I don't know anything about him. And it was a long night, no doubt. I think I slept like 20 hours. I mean, I think I missed the entire next day, but knew that I needed to get in to see some sort of counseling. And I did that the first day that I woke up. But I woke up to hundreds of text messages of, hey, it's not your fault. Hey, I'm sorry you went through this. hey, wrong place, wrong time. Hey, I can't believe it. Do you want to talk about it? I'm here for you. You know, stuff like that. You know, people trying to be kind, right? That's an unusual, like, how do you respond to somebody that goes through something like that? Like, I honestly, I don't know that I would necessarily how I would have handled that being a friend or a colleague of me.
Yeah.
But, you know, I remember being with the counselor, and I don't know that I said a whole lot. Obviously, I told her what happened, and she got me in immediately. And there was a lot of silence. There was a lot of, for me, just questioning why me kind of thing. And once again, going through that loop in my mind about who he was, why he did that. You know, being someone that's always been passionate about leadership, you know, I questioned, like, gosh, did he have a bad boss? You know, what was his work environment like? Did he have a job? And, you know, some of the things you think about are kind of really strange and out there, and I certainly understand. But the weeks and months following that, I just wasn't present anywhere in life. I wasn't present with my family, and I've got 3 kids and a wife of 23 years. I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't really want to eat. I didn't want to work out. I didn't want to do anything in my normal routine. I wanted to stay in bed and honestly just bury my head. And that went on for a few months till finally I was so sick of not being present. Now, had you asked my family or my wife, how's Clegg doing? They would have been like, oh, he's great. Like, never even talks about it. You know, I don't think he thinks about it. He said no. And I wasn't really openly sharing. Now I continue to go to counseling, you know, for 3 or 4 months. And really, it was last summer. I knew that I was in a bad place. I knew that I wasn't being productive. I knew that I wasn't really being beneficial to anyone in my life. And so I was just scrolling YouTube, honestly. And I was Googling, I think, like trauma, transformation, those types of things. And I came across some videos by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And it, like, this whole idea of your future self just really spoke to me.
Yes.
And I mean, he's got hundreds of videos on there. I believe at this point now I've watched, I think, every single one or podcast that he's been on. I've been working with Dr. Hardy for the better part of the last year in some mastermind groups with him. He's been a big part of me becoming my future self. And even so much so that I've created my own program, group coaching, for people that are just stuck in life. That are looking for more. They may not know what more is, but they know they want it, called the Future You program. And so, so many things have happened since then, but the recovery really started when I started diving into trauma and this whole ideal around being the future version of yourself.
Yeah, and that's what I was really interested with your material and the future you. And Dr. Ben Hardy is awesome. That's how Clegg and I know each other. And this future self book and program is awesome. And so I wanted to hear about your future you program as well. But before we get into that, so one of the things I think I heard you saying is about when after this happened, all these people reached out to you, but I always like to say the opposite of addiction is connection. And it sounds like were you disconnecting from people or?
Yeah, I really was. I didn't realize I was, but you know, you can only tell the story so many times. I mean, most people knew what happened. I mean, when something like that happens, I mean, not that I'm like this big public figure or anything, but you know, I am CEO of an organization, so I have a lot of connections through 20 plus years of being in this industry. I coach high school football, so many of these kids on the team I've coached even from their Pop Warner days all the way through high school. So I've got a lot of families that I've been involved with over the last 15 years. And so word did spread pretty quickly. And honestly, I think I told you the first time I really told the full story, I believe, was telling you. outside of obviously my counselor and really a select few people, but publicly, I've never told the full story. I've told part of the accident, through my TEDx talk and the recovery, but it really was more about the recovery than it was the accident and how I felt in the moment and actually what happened in the accident.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is cleansing. But I don't, ironically, one of my values is connection. But yeah, I think it's very safe to say that I was actively disconnecting.
Yeah. So, and that is that disconnection from people is what often fuels different types of addictions and behaviors. So, but the cool thing is you came across Dr. Ben Hardy's material, Future You, Future Self material, and I also stumbled across Dr. Hardy material as well, and but I was already very active into the identity change because that's the whole powerful Eric story. I went to all these programs where they say have you say you're powerless over it, and it didn't work. So I decided one day I'm going to call myself Powerful Eric, and so that's why I was so attracted to Dr. Hardy's material and your material. So walk us through that. So how did you start to turn things around, or did it get worse first? Or walk us through that.
Yeah. I wouldn't say after that point it got worse. I would say this whole idea of becoming your future self was pretty intriguing to me. I mean, naturally, I think I'm a fairly ambitious person anyways, but I love my profiles. I love starting things, but not necessarily finishing things. And so this was, and let me take one step back. You have to understand when I discovered this and found this, I'm running QWorks Group, which is my executive placement firm, as the CEO and co-owner, and really took my eye off the ball in a bad way, just not being present. And it was the end of September when I realized that our accountant at the time had hired one of their family members to do the bookkeeping. Well, they had flipped debits and credits. They were listing debits as credits and credits as debits.
Oh boy.
And so when I woke up from, this awful event and really started trying to be present, I realized that, as I was looking under the covers, that we had lost almost $500,000 in our business that year. And we weren't even in Q4 yet. So, so throw that on top of the accident and all of the residual things that come from the accident. It was a pretty crappy place to be. But I have to be honest, because I had started dreaming about this whole ideal around the future self, I just put together some steps to overcome the challenge, made some very rapid changes inside of the organization. And you have to understand, we also hit an all-time high in revenue last year. So we had to pay commissions and bonuses on that revenue, even though we were losing a significant amount of money.
Oh boy.
And so that created this whole set of challenges. So all of this is going on in the back end. And, Dr. Hardy says it's not how you do things, it's who you do them with, right? It's who, not how. And so I really adapted to that who concept and just started going out, trying to partner, connect with other who's that could help me get out of, one, my accident struggles, and two, the company struggles. And so I joined Ben's mastermind group in Q4 last year, and I really started doing some deep work. And one of the things that I work towards now is my mission is to humanize 1 million conscious leaders. And a conscious leader doesn't necessarily have to have that corporate title to be a conscious leader. A conscious leader is someone that's deeply introspective and highly self-aware. And most of us, actually like 85+% of us, are not self-aware, even though 95% of us will say that. Sure.
What do you mean humanize them?
Yeah. So you've already mentioned connection. being a human is, what separates us from, the rest of the animal kingdom, right? It's our ability to learn, right? It's our level of intelligence and our emotions. But in the workplace and in life, we feel like, unless we're in the confines of our homes, we feel like we have to leave emotion out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't grow without emotion, because you can't get excited about a future without emotion. Excitement in and of itself is an emotion. And so embracing the emotions, drumming up the appropriate emotions is part of that deep introspection. And that's what Dr. Hardy helped me with. Was I'd never journaled. I'd never done any of the things that he taught us, that 18 months ago before the accident, I would have called all that stuff like, I don't do any of that woo-woo crap. Well, that woo-woo crap is like, it's gold. It is magic. And I'm a believer. I was not, right? I mean, I was your prototypical male sports guy, coach, tough guy, alpha male, all of that.
Right.
That didn't get me anywhere, right? Not to say that I didn't have a level of success prior to the accident, but what I didn't realize that prior to the accident, I had reached a ceiling in my life and it was a self-proclaimed, I didn't even know it was there. I just said, you know what? This is as good as it gets. Now I was doing that automatically. I wasn't actively saying that because I wasn't actively keeping score on my goals and ambitions. Shame on me. And, at the time, a 49-year-old man, I started looking back going, man, I have had some success, but why did I stop? And what I realized was I had stopped dreaming. And so as I started journaling with Dr. Hardy in Q4 last year, there's a whole host of things that came up. And, I call it the power of the pen. You learn so much about yourself. That doesn't happen overnight, right? It just doesn't happen overnight. But it wasn't too long. It wasn't, too many weeks out where I really started identifying things that I had forgotten. And one of the things in, Ben's mastermind was at the end, when I was really looking forward to what are some impossible goals for me to really set beyond Q4 for 2024. One of them was, I'm going to tell this story of recovery on a TEDx stage. So I determined that in December of last year. And to me, that was everybody that's doing TED Talks, they're all like famous people, right? Those are people that have books. Those are people that, have changed the world in some way, shape, or form. I didn't know, right? I made a lot of assumptions, and it's one of the things we learned to question our assumptions. And so I started this idea of just asking myself one question. And this is, if for your audience that's listening, write this down. Asking yourself one question. So when I said, I want to do a TEDx stage, I want to be on a TEDx stage to tell the story of recovery within 5 years was my goal. That's what I was putting down on paper. The question is, what would have to be true in order for you to achieve that? So I go to the pen, I start journaling, and I start going through the process of, what would have to be true? Well, I need to have a book. Well, I need to be famous. Well, all these self-limiting beliefs, right? The lies that we tell ourselves, I'm writing on paper. And it did take me a few days to ultimately get to it. But what I realized was, like, if I'm going to do this, I had to commit. I have to be all in. And one of the things that I teach my clients is, if you want to change, you can't wait until you feel good, because you're not going to have confidence about change, because change requires you to do something different. And two, most people wait for the capability to know how to do something before they commit to doing it. And that's why so many people are stuck. That's why 93% of people never achieve their goals. Because they're waiting until they feel good or waiting to know how to do something. And I fully committed. I was all in. I burned the boats. And I said, I'm going to be on a TEDx stage within 5 years. And what I ended up coming up with is what would have to be true in order for me to achieve that was, I'm going to hire a speaking coach. And so did some interviews, found a local guy to North Carolina, had a conversation with him. And what I figured was, I don't know how to do a TED Talk. I'm not a professional speaker. I don't even know how to land a TED Talk. Everything I read about it was like some things that I saw, it takes 50 plus times of applications before you even get one.
Actually, the average is 86
Holy
applications to land one talk.
Wow. So I hire someone who had already done 2 and who was a professional speaker. And he got me to apply the 1st of January, or the end of December, rather, before the end of Q4. He got me to apply to a TEDx. And by the way, when I say he got me to apply, he told me to apply and I didn't. And I get a text message from him at like 3:00 before the 5 p.m. deadline. Clegg, everybody calls me Clegg, by the way, including my wife. Clegg, have you applied? I was like, should I even respond or wait till after 5:00? So I respond, I was like, no. He goes, apply, please apply. You didn't hire me to not figure this out. Apply. This is built for you. This is made for you. I know it. I feel it. Apply. So I did. And a few weeks later, I got a phone call that they were intrigued about my story. And then, the process happens. You have to do an interview. You have to send a 3-minute video. There's this whole process. And I ended up being selected. But the point is that my mindset was what would have to be true. And so I responded, I answered, I journaled on that and came up with hiring a speaking coach, someone that's already, one, knows how to do it. So there was the capability that we usually wait for. It's his capability he was going to teach me. And then the confidence, I felt great because I was hiring someone. So I felt confident to apply, not because I knew how to do it or anything about it, or that I would get selected the first time I applied. I certainly didn't think that would happen.
Yeah.
But because I was all in, because I burned the boats, because I fully committed, it didn't happen in 5 years. I was on a TEDx stage within 5 months.
Wow.
And that was that was also a part of this recovery, because, my mindset started changing about this future you. And oh, by the way, how I landed on doing a TED Talk or a TEDx was in my journaling. I had started coming up with things that happened to me as a kid and a lot of trauma. And, most of us know our lives, when our lives are crap, they tend to stem from things that happened to us when we were kids. And I mean, the first 7-8 minutes of my TEDx is all things that I remembered by journaling. I mean, my TEDx starts, picture this, an 8-year-old little boy standing on top of a bunk bed, holding a small Bible, pretending to preach to the congregation below. But in reality, the only member of the congregation was my 3-year-old little brother. Like, when I was writing that, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, because I remembered standing on that damn bunk bed, holding that small Bible, pretending to preach to my little brother. And I remembered the feeling of being in front of people. I remembered the feeling of dreaming, of ambition, of one day being in a stadium, in an arena, in front of thousands of people telling my story. Now, I didn't want to be a preacher, right? I didn't want to be standing on the pulpit, but that's all I knew at that time. I went to church on Sundays with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remembered that. I remembered things about when my parents got divorced. I remembered things about my stepdad, and all bad things that now I realized that, we all hear the victim mindset, and most of us ask the question, why did that happen to me? And I get that. I understand it's a natural response. Why? But in reality, what Dr. Hardy helped me with was, that why did that happen to me is a very victim mindset. It's a very fixed mindset. Like I had anything to do with the event. Of course I didn't. But what Dr. Hardy says is shift your thought process from what happened to you to how did that happen for you? And when I met him, which is an entirely different story, probably for another episode, but I met him during the Q4 challenge after I had declared the day before that he was going to be one of my who's. He said to me, and I said, Ben, I just can't get past this whole happened to me versus for me. I said, I just don't understand. I said, so basically that's me saying that someone else had to lose their life in order for me to have a good one. Like, that's some selfish ass stuff right there. Like, I don't even, he was like, no, Clegg, you don't understand. It's not, he's like, the past is yours. We don't control the events. Bad things happen to good people all the time. We cannot control the events, but what we can control is the meaning of those events.
Yes. Yes.
What can we pull out of why that was happening?
Yes.
What lessons have we learned? And I'm not, I get that. That was like that was a massive breakthrough moment for me. Because I realized that I had the power of that event. I had the power of taking the meaning out of that event. And that's when everything really started coming together, and including going, I need to tell the story. I need to tell the things that I've learned about this recovery, about this process, about thinking about tomorrow, becoming the future you.
Yes.
And it was so powerful. And so I made that, I declared that goal. And my impossible goal is going to be to tell a TEDx, be on a TEDx stage, average Joe, in 5 years. But because I fully committed to happen in 5 months, I'm going to start and found a new company called Leadership Squared, which Leadership Squared is a framework that I call the power of two, which is culture and connection, right? And that's the whole premise around humanizing 1 million conscious leaders, because you cannot be a conscious leader without deep introspection. Because look at all the things that I would not have had in life had I not found Dr. Hardy and realized the value of deep introspection. And then having high self-awareness. Self-awareness telling me, well, I don't know how to be on a TEDx stage, but I can find somebody that does. And so that set this chain of events into one, being on a TEDx stage, April of 2024, earlier this year, starting and founding this company in January, making it profitable inside of just a handful of months.
Wow.
And now starting to grow this and create a program. And oh, by the way, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, but I realized like I couldn't help more people. I'm like, how am I going to humanize 1 million conscious leaders if I'm only meeting people one-on-one? And one of the things Ben told me in May, he's like, Clegg, you got to start saying no to things. You've got to start uncommitting from things in your life that don't serve a purpose to your mission.
Yeah.
And so that's when I said, oh my gosh, I can start doing group coaching. I can actually start really professionally speaking, reaching more people, getting more swings at the bat. We're in the middle of the World Series. So sorry, Yankee fans, but we're in the middle of the World Series. So let's use a baseball analogy. We just got to get to the plate. We got to get more at bats. And so me having group coaching, keynote speaking to leaders inside of organizations and sharing the struggles, because guess what? Whether companies believe it or not, they're inheriting all of these things, baggage, addictions, all the things that we're bringing those things to work.
Yes.
Just like schools inherit troubled kids that don't have active parental guardians at home, the workplace is now inheriting mental illness. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of mentally ill people because we all had struggles and challenges in our childhood that have never, ever been deeply discussed at any level. And so.
Wow, you brought up so many incredible points. And one thing you talked about is reframing what happened. Like, you can't change what happened, but changing the way you see it, the story you tell yourself about it. Yep. And I can't help but think, like, all is in divine order. This person chose to end their life and really include another person, really. Like that person didn't.
And more than me, because there were people that were driving beside and behind me that saw it happen.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what that has done to them.
Yeah. So that person chose to include these people in his death. But like I was saying, all's in divine order. And like what good what good has then, like, how do you framing this now when
Yeah,
you
no,
look at?
great question. So the meaning that I took away from this is from my perspective, the accident itself, as I mentioned, I do leadership development. I work with clients and individual organizations, some large, some small. And most of us have to go to work every day to survive, right? And there's one thing, and I've always taught this, I've created these, what I call bad boss personas. And each one of these personas have a different bad behavior. And so in this, and going through that mental loop of who is he, is he a dad? Is he a father? Is he a brother? Is he best friend? Where does he work? Who's his boss? Really got me thinking, how can I connect the two? And that's when this whole idea around conscious leadership really started changing like my entire thought process and world. Because you got to understand, I'm a Gen Xer. I'm now 51. And, I was brought up in the world where you leave your crap at the door. No more. Millennials and Gen Zs are not leaving their crap at the door. For anyone that's been in a workplace anytime in the last decade, we know that. And so we can either bury our heads as leaders, or we can actually start treating them like humans and caring about them and helping them find the answers. And one of the things that I will be a living example of is, the idea, the mindset of becoming the future version of myself. That is what pulled me out of the hole that the accident put me in.
Yeah.
This whole idea of hope, which I used to have a saying, hope is not a strategy. And I still believe that. And I still say that from time to time, but hope is necessary. Hope is necessary to have something to believe in. And I hear it all the time. Like, I don't believe in anything. One, you do have to help yourself. I can't want it for you. But the one thing that I'm utterly convinced of, that we all have a unique ability. Doesn't matter what it is, but the overwhelming majority of us have no idea what that unique ability is.
Yeah.
So, I take this through over a 6-month period of how can I help people find their purpose? Because one, I'm in staffing. So
Yeah.
I get to talk to a lot of unemployed people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get to talk to a lot of clients. And so as I'm able to integrate this work leadership development with this, oh, by the way, humanizing conscious leadership, like you become the full person that you're meant to be. And we all have a purpose.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out what that is. And most of us, God, we're not even taught how. I was about to say balance a checkbook. Does anyone even have a checkbook anymore? But, balance the budget. We're never even taught that in school. We're definitely not taught how to find their purpose.
Yeah.
That's
sure.
masked with, hey, I'll let you take this elective to see if you like it. Like even in college, I mean, we're taught none of that.
Yeah.
So
well, Clegg,
that
it
was
sounds to
transition.
me like this tragedy, because you said prior to that happening that you had pretty much kind of stopped dreaming. And so this kind of forced you to start dreaming again and really rebuild your life, right?
Absolutely. And I truly believe that Dr. Hardy is going to take this whole future ideal and take it to another level. I do believe that becoming your future self is a trauma recovery tool. I'm sure there are many other tools. I am not a PhD in that area. What I speak to is what happened to me.
Yeah.
And I know how low, how bad, how awful I was for several months. And some people have been this way for years after events. And the one thing I've learned through this whole trauma recovery research that I've been doing is that 70% of people are going to experience trauma at some level in their lives. And I'm not talking about stubbing your toe, running down the hallway, like real trauma. And that's absolutely frightening. So 70% of your workforce is either already experienced that trauma or is going to be experiencing trauma. And leaders need to figure that out. And so my hope is that my messaging will help them bridge that gap so that people can become, because without connection, as you were talking about earlier, none of this is possible.
Right.
And so, this tool of becoming your future self is absolutely real. It's not woo-woo. It's not BS. It is legit. Like I said, I was a freaking average Joe, but I know now that I have so much more to give. And I'm so look, motivation, inspiration, that stuff dies. That stuff burns out. Right. And that's where people get disconnected with what that future self should look like. Because once again, the feeling. But at first you do get excited about this future, and then you lay out the pathway. Right. And you figure out how it fits in your individual life. That hope does continue the process, continues the steps. Because most people say, well, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to have an end result. Well, the process doesn't make the goal. The goal, right, should be where we start. The process should be figured out. The pathway should be figured out based on the goal. That's where the pathway should come from.
In the book, Atomic Habits, he says, super popular book, great book. In Atomic Habits, he says, true habit change is identity change. That future self. And you said about using the future self to overcome addictions. Absolutely. And like I said, I stumbled across that accidentally. Now I actively use it with clients and have them come up, once we get through a lot of work, have them come up with a superhero name. What are their superpowers? Mine are being bold, brave, and confident, because I was none of those.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, no, you do. And you have to change your identity. And here's a spoiler alert. You're going to lose some relationships over it. Just are. I mean, I have buddies that, make fun of this whole Future You program idea, like genuinely make fun of it. They laugh. But as I say, just like when I told my wife, right, that I was going to be on a TEDx stage and I was going to write a book, she laughed. She did. She goes, oh, you're being serious? I was like, yep. And I challenge you, whatever your goal is, if the person that you care about the most doesn't laugh, your goal is not big enough.
I love it.
And I mean that. I truly mean that.
I like the question that you asked earlier about, you were asking, how can I land, or you wanted to land a TED Talk. And by the way, that was an extraordinary event, because on average, I know, because I'm in the midst of landing a TED Talk, it takes 86 applications to get one TED or TEDx talk, and you did it on the first try.
Maybe I should have played the lottery that day. I don't know. But.
But anyway, my question though for you, or that you asked, was what would have to happen for that to be true, for me to land that talk?
Yeah.
And so I would suggest to people that are listening to this, what would have to happen for you to overcome whatever the adversity is? What would have to happen for you to overcome sex or porn addiction? What would have to happen for you to overcome your alcoholism? What would have to happen for that to be true? I love that question. What would have to happen for that to be true?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a powerful question. It's one I start with, and I'll give you an example. One of my participants in the Future You program, we were having a conversation before the kickoff of the program, and he was a little embarrassed to tell me what his impossible goal was. And I was like, dude, it's okay. Like I'm going to be here along the way with you. Like I kind of need to know what it is in order to help, put the program together for you. And he said, I want to be a professional golfer on the Champions Tour. Now he's not a professional golfer. He's not even a scratch golfer. And I was like, wait, like seriously? And I giggled. I'm not gonna lie. And I was like, wow, like that's absolutely awesome. And I said to him, and I said, do you know how you're going to do it? And he goes, I have no idea. I'm hoping to figure that out in the program. I said, okay. I said, well, I'm going to ask you one question I ask everybody. What would have to be true in order for you to achieve that? He's like, well, I don't know. I said, no, you know, like, let's really dig in and think about that. And he said, well, he goes, I got to become a better golfer. And I said, yeah, but you've also bettered. He's a pretty athletic guy. He was a college baseball player, so it's not like he's starting from no athleticism. But he's been living this life for the past 25 years, working hourly jobs here and there, and just wandering around trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. And but he's gotten like 15 strokes better in the last 2 years of playing golf, just by himself, going to the range a few times a week and playing a couple times on the weekends. And so I said to him, I said, no, let's dig in more. What else? He said, I don't know. I probably need to hire a coach, swing coach, somebody that knows how to get someone that's been there, done that. I said, okay, what else? He's like, I don't know, man. You're supposed to tell me. I was like, no. I'm here to ask the questions. The answers has to come from you. And so he goes and he lists like 6, 7, 8 things, better equipment, because his clubs are like 20 years old. I mean, you'll get better by default just because the equipment has changed, right? I mean, that could be another 5 to 7 strokes. And so anything is possible. That doesn't mean he's going to achieve that. But think about the progress that he's going to make. Think about the benefits of the progress that he makes. Think about the relationships of people that he's going to build and the connections that he's going to build. Like, this could be the avenue of him actually finding his future self, because it's not so much about the impossible goal. There are very few paths that would actually get him to be on a professional golfer. I mean, he would have to be roughly about 12 strokes better than where he is right now to do that. 10 to 12. But if he starts competing and he starts getting better and that momentum starts building and he meets connections, he meets new people, someone somewhere is going to love him because he's an unbelievable human being. And they're going to go, hey, what else do you do? He's going to be like, I drive a truck. Well, hey, would you want to do whatever it is? And that's how things happen. But he is actively pursuing something. And let's be honest. If he doesn't achieve that, but he gains new relationships that actually helps propel him forward in life, like, isn't that what it's all about anyways? Right. But what if he does do it? How amazing of a story. And you want to know what happened, what gave him this thought and this idea? He saw Instagram, Facebook, something, a story of a 71-year-old man that had just qualified for the Champions Tour.
Awesome.
And he's like, dude, I'm 20 years younger than this guy. Like, I'm pretty athletic. I could be really good at this game. And it wasn't until he saw that story till he said, hey, maybe it is possible for me. Think about, most of your audience probably knows who Roger Bannister is, okay? And those that don't, Roger Bannister is the first person on record, allegedly there are others before him, but the first person on record that broke the 4-minute mile, because it wasn't humanly possible. Within the year of him breaking that, hundreds of years go by, no one breaks this record. He breaks the record in, like, what was it, 1954 or something like that. Mm-hmm. By the end of 1955, like something like 56 people had broken that barrier, because now they believed that it was possible. So if you don't think that your mindset matters, there are stories littered throughout history of mindset changes. Yeah. Did the Wright brothers really, like, I guarantee you people thought they were nuts. So
the impossible goal, a lot of the people that would be listening to this may be thinking that whatever the circumstances, they're and they can't overcome them, or maybe think it's impossible that they break their addiction to whatever it might be. That's impossible. But it is possible.
Yeah, people do it
And
every day.
I love your story. Thank you so much for sharing it. I could continue listening and talking with you. But what would you say before we wrap up here? If someone came to you that was really struggling with, they had some trauma in life, and then they are fallen into some addiction, what questions would you ask that person?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing we would ask is where do they enjoy life? Because I think that's important. And if they're in a very low spot, like where I was, 15, 16, 17 months ago, I would have answered that question with, bro, I just rolled over top of somebody. I ain't enjoying any part of my life. And I understand that. But the follow-up question to that would be, where have you enjoyed life? And I would go all the way back to being a kid, where I've enjoyed life. And there is answers in there, because we do stuff every day that is our unique ability. And the problem with that whole theory is the word unique. People look at themselves because of the self-limiting beliefs, which are the lies we tell ourselves, and go, and just like I do, I'm an average Joe. I'm no different than anybody else. I'm the same dude, just like every other guy, dad on the street. But we get hung up on this word unique. And it's not about we're so unique, because a lot of other people have the same unique ability. So I wish we would change that name a little bit to, I think Patrick Lencioni calls it your working genius. Whatever it may be, we all have it. And so I would help people dig into where in their lives they have gained energy by doing anything. Could have been writing. It could have been painting. It could have been working on a car. It could have been landscaping. It could have been anything, right? It could be talking to people. Maybe they're a coach in the making, but everybody's experience or experiences will benefit somebody else. So that alone will help someone else. And there is tremendous value. What I've learned is the more value I give to others, the more freedoms I get in return. And, that's the first step. They have to figure out where life has brought them joy.
Thank you so much, Clegg. Clegg, you mentioned bringing value to others. If someone wants to learn some of the value and services that you offer, how do they reach out to you?
The easiest is probably just on LinkedIn, which is Michael, my middle initial B, Clegg, Clegg. That's probably the easiest way, because otherwise I'm giving them websites to one of two companies, two different email addresses. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. And, that's certainly the best way, and be happy to have a conversation with anyone regarding any of the stuff we talked about today.
Okay. And if you wouldn't mind, though, still mentioning the websites.
Yeah, sure. So QWorks, which is our executive placement firm, is QWorks Group, the letter Q, WORKS group.com. And the coaching and development organization, Leadership Squared, is leadership-squared, SQUARED.com.
Well, fantastic. We are about out of time here, so I am going to close by saying that, well, thank you for joining us on this episode of Porn Talk. Michael Clegg's story reminds us that even in the face of life's darkest moments, we have the opportunity to rediscover purpose and reconnect with who we were meant to become. From his Leaders Go First philosophy to his Leadership Squared framework, Michael showed us the value of building trust, fostering connection, and leading with intention, whether it's our professional lives or personal lives to recovery. In today's conversation, if today's conversation inspired you, remember to keep moving forward towards the future self you dream of. And thanks for listening. We will see you on the next episode. And remember, you are what you are and where you are because of what has gone into your mind. And you can change what you are and you can change where you are by changing what goes into your beautiful mind.